Welcome to the Uncharted Podcast. I am your host, Inés Franklin. My hope for you today is that we discover faith beyond the boundaries. Uncharted is intended to be a safe place for you to listen, learn, and challenge yourself along your journey of faith. May grace and peace be with you today. Welcome to the show. Welcome, friends. I'm Inés Franklin, and with me is Kayleigh Antenucci. And
Hello.
we have been on a journey looking at spiritual practices that help us grow closer to God. And today's spiritual practice is one that I wish I knew when I was younger. I did not understand this until I became a believer at 40. So I'll talk about a long part of my life not really understanding this. And so I'm so glad that you're with us. Maybe this is something you're very familiar with, and I hope it's an encouragement to you today. If this is new to you, don't feel bad. Because like I said, I didn't know about this until I was much older. And so today we're going to talk about stewardship, which is very connected to generosity. And we did do a podcast on generosity. So I want to encourage you to go back through our feed and listen to that practice. They do go together. You're going to feel like we're talking about generosity at the same time as we're talking about stewardship. When we did the generosity podcast, we talked about stewardship. These two things go together, but they're not exactly the same thing. And so what we've been doing all along is using Adele Calhoun's book on spiritual practices. She has them also separated. And we read her definition and the desires that come beneath it so that we are clear in what we're talking about. So, Kayleigh, would you start us off by reading Adele Calhoun's definition?
Yes. So the definition for stewardship is the voluntary and generous offering of God's gifts of resources, time, talents, and treasures for the benefit and love of God and others.
I love that. And the desire that's behind it?
Yeah, and the desire behind it says to live as a steward of God's resources in all areas of life, to live out the awareness that nothing I have is my own, which to me is like, that's the most important aspect. That is where even generosity has been spurred on in my heart, but definitely stewardship is a reminder that everything here is temporary. Everything here is not mine. Everything here is just something that I get to use or utilize during the time that I'm on this earth. And so that then helps me reformat my brain in every aspect of what I'm doing because I know it's temporary. I just get to hold on to it for a little while.
Yeah, very true. And I think this is the part, I agree with you. This is the key difference between stewardship and generosity. In generosity, we're giving from what we have, but it starts with a mindset of stewardship, right? That everything that we have has been given to us. It's not really ours. We're getting to hold it, to nurture it, to multiply it, hopefully, and then to use it for good. And that was so foreign to me. I think sometimes stewardship sounds like a privileged position that you can have a stewardship mindset if you have a lot.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'll be a good steward. Give me a lot to steward. But when you don't have enough to eat or enough to pay the rent, or your car broke down and now you need new tires or whatever, a new engine, and you don't have the money for it, you don't feel like a steward. You don't feel like you have everything you need. And what you have been given isn't enough. Yeah. So this is where I grew up. So I grew up in a very poor context, and we did not have enough. We struggled. We lived on government assistance. We got rice and flour and cheese, big block of cheese and powdered milk, so gross. And we grew our own beans. We grew our own vegetables. We had our chicken. And we had a pig that my mom would get every year, and then she would sell it, get another little piglet, and raise. I mean, we were living on bare minimum, trying to make ends meet. Yeah. So I think if I would have been taught at that time, everything that you have is not yours, is given to you by God. I was saying, what's the matter with God? Does he not have enough? Because I'm struggling over here.
Yeah. Right? Like, why don't you just give me a little bit more?
Right. So, if you're listening to this and you're like, wait, but I don't have enough. Why is God not giving me enough? I get it. I think that is the struggle with stewardship.
Well, I see it. Agreed. And I see it in a different way. And I hope that if you did come in feeling that, or like feeling that kind of frustration or curiosity, even of like, okay, God, why. Why are some of us given so little to steward, perhaps, or it feels like little to steward versus some people are given a lot to steward? And I would say that stewardship actually extends so much farther than just like our physical items in our hand, right? Like
Yes.
than how much money is in our bank account. I think it's very common for us to think of stewardship in that way. But I even think about like stewarding a team. If you're a manager, I think of like stewarding your children, right? Of like getting to raise your children and being a part of that. I think of stewardship in so many other aspects of our day-to-day, stewarding how we work. There's so many actions even that are involved in stewardship. And so but I can see how it like is very commonly thought of as, oh, this is just a financial or like physical stewardship, you know?
That's so good. Well, for that matter, stewarding your body, stewarding your relationships, right? That God brings before you. So absolutely, it's more than that. But I remember entering into this, I believe it would have been hard for me at a time when I didn't have enough to think, oh, look at all that I have. And, as a kid, I didn't have enough as far as finances, but I was beyond blessed with family. I'm one of 7 children. My mom raised us. She worked hard to keep us together. That was a blessing. That was beautiful. We have a huge family. She's one of 13 kids. So I have 45 cousins or some crazy number. So when we all got together, it was like 100 people, and we all brought food and we played. And there was just so much blessing and so much, abundance that came from having a huge family. And so that, in that sense, if I would have been taught about stewardship, I would have seen, oh, look at what you've given me. We had a home that my grandfather gave us the land, and my mom with her brothers slowly built the foundation and then the walls. And we had a home. We weren't bouncing from place to place. So there were a lot of things that I had if I could have seen stewardship more holistically as we're talking about it today.
Yeah, but it makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's so funny. I was just talking to my husband about it the other day about like when I had our 2 young girls when they were babies, and I was previously married, I stayed at home and I now work. I still stay at home, but I work from home. I work full time. I can't just like do things around the house that I used to do quite regularly, And so the way that I even steward our house now looks very different than how I steward the house when I was a stay-at-home mom. Like things are a bit messier, I'm gonna be honest, and things are a bit more chaotic and like schedules are crazier, but I still get the gift of stewarding my home. I still get the gift of hosting and leading and being a part of it. I still get to take care of my kids within it. And so no matter where you're at, no matter how much you feel you are stewarding in this season, or maybe you feel like, I don't even know what I'd be stewarding, in this season, take a minute and just like acknowledge even the small things that maybe don't feel like it. Like that is an opportunity to steward as well. And the Lord wants us to steward it well. He wants us to care for it well because it's not ours, right? And that's hard, but that's the reality is everything here is not ours. It's the Lord's. But we get to care for it. We get to love Him by caring for the things that we're gifted.
Very good. Beautiful. This takes me back to Genesis 1. Right at the beginning of the biblical narrative, we get given the most powerful testimony of who we are in relationship to God, to the Creator Himself. And so I just want to read that to us because I think it fits with what you just said. I'm just going to read a portion of it where it talks about the creation of humanity in Genesis 1, starting in verse 26. The beautiful thing about Genesis 1 is that it tells you all of creation, everything pretty quickly, but then when it gets to humanity, it slows down and it says so much more, and it repeats itself. I always say that when scripture repeats itself, pay attention. And there's a lot of repetition here on purpose. And I think what this will give us a sense of stewardship that is so beautiful because God is God. He has power over everything. He's sovereign. He's the one who created everything. There's not a thing we have that we created ourselves. Anytime we create as humans, we're creating with the materials that God has given us, right? But He chooses to give us stewardship, to give us a part to play in His creation. That's incredible. It says this, and God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. They will rule the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and the livestock, the whole earth, and the creatures that crawl on the earth. So God created man in his own image. He created him in the image of God. He created them, male and female. And God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and every creature that crawls on the earth. You notice the repetition? When I teach this, I teach a class on the image of God at Mariners. And when I teach this, I share with them that when it talks about ruling and subduing, those are royal words. Usually those are tasks only done by a mighty king. Not an average person gets to rule and subdue. But here in creation, every single man and woman is made in the image of God to be in his likeness. And then we're given this incredible responsibility and beautiful task and honor to be stewards of God's creation, to care for it, to multiply it, to nourish it. That is incredible. And then it goes far beyond the things that we have, far beyond money, far beyond even our relationships. It says the whole earth. We get to steward the whole earth. Everything that's on the earth is part of our stewardship. I love that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, it just made me think of, too, even maybe someone's asking a question of like, well, why does God want us to steward his things on the earth? Like, then why are we sent here to do that? And all of these spiritual practices that we've been doing over the past 9-10 months now have really been a practice in growing closer to God. So then it always, whenever there's the question of why do we do this? We can always look at how does this help us grow closer to God? And I really see stewardship as something that helps us grow closer to God because it really, truly is God the same way. God is stewarding us, right? God is guiding us. He's shepherding us. He's leading us. He's directing us. He cares for us. And so he is showing us in his nature how to also steward what he has provided for us. And so it's kind of us getting to truly live out what God, a very small depiction of what God is doing for us with things that are here on the earth.
True. Yeah, it's actually being in his likeness, right? It's like if you have a wonderful father that you love and adore and you want to be like him, you want to do the things that he does. Yeah. And so we're doing the same things that God does. He stewards well. We get to steward well. He stewards with love and patience and faithfulness and generosity, and we get to do the same. In Adele's book, it gives us kind of like the why. I like this part because I think it helps, again, for someone who's here and says, oh, this is new to me. Stewardship is not something I've been thinking much about. Here's just a few of the things Adele says are the benefits of thinking of stewardship and acting that out. Like she says, being liberated from greed, self-centeredness, money, and the things that the generous spirit of Jesus grows in you, right? So these other things will keep us from growing if we're stuck in greed and self-centeredness. Another one is embracing generous hospitality towards those who are in need, modeling God's goodness and generosity. You and I talked about that, right? Here's a good one. Increasing our awareness of our selfishness and lack of love for others. Right? When we're trying, I'm going to be a good steward of this. For example, some of the things that she talks about that you can do is to can you live on less so that you can give to someone else? I mean, it can be as simple as, I'm going to skip my Starbucks today. I don't know what does it cost a Starbucks now? I don't. Oh my
gosh, like $7 to $10 depending on the drink.
Okay, right. Yeah. So let's say I'm going to say $10 for rounding, right? You have a $10 drink that today you just skip. You have your coffee at home or your tea bag, and you take those $10 and then you give it to someone else so they can have, or even just buy someone else their coffee. I mean, just the idea of going with less so that someone else can be flourishing. That's one way to put it to work, or downsizing so others can move up. And again, this is not just money. If you're a leader that you want to lift another person up, you kind of back up a little bit and create a void so that another person or a group of people can fill that void. And now they develop, now they grow. So it's one way of being a good steward of what we have, is to not use what we have and let somebody else be the one to jump in, right?
Yeah.
Creating space.
Yeah, it is definitely so cool. Actually, I don't know if you saw, but in the book itself, the first sentence at the very beginning, when it like does the more detailed breakdown, says worship has always included sharing what God has given us with others. And it goes on to explain that that's part of stewardship too, is really just having that be shown. So part of us worshiping God is also sharing availability with others. You know, as we're talking about this, it just keeps reminding me, I have a girlfriend of mine who like truly sees that with her kids. Okay. She says every single day, like, I just get the privilege of being their parents. But
beautiful.
It's not that like these are my kids. I just get the opportunity to teach them and shepherd them now, you know? And that because she thinks like that, truly because she thinks like that, what you see is such a freedom in even how she parents or how she hands her children off to other people. Like there is no type of holding back of like, no, this is my kid, this is my space. And it's so simple, yet I see how that even just kind of speaks to other women's hearts, other people's hearts, of how she just like so freely is like, none of this is truly mine. Like I just get the opportunity to raise them. So it's a really beautiful, beautiful gift that she has in doing that. And I think that that's a beautiful depiction of how we can steward in all sorts of ways, steward in parenting even.
That's powerful, Kayleigh, you know, because nowadays I think, especially with having the internet, I think as a parent, when I was younger, I wanted to be a good parent. I stressed over it, don't get me wrong. So that's not new. But now parents have Instagram and, you know, I mean, Melissa, my youngest, your sister, she has a baby, 9 months old. And I've looked at some things on Instagram and now it's sending me every kind of video about things you feed your baby, games to play with them, things to do. And, you know, you're just bombarded with information, how to be a good parent. And just, I don't know, that would create me even greater anxiousness because even as a nana, I'm going, I'm not doing that with my grandkids. Maybe I should. What am I doing wrong?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But when you think of your children as a steward, not only is it freeing as far as like, am I parenting this child well? Am I doing everything I'm supposed to do? Because they belong to God. I do my best and God cares for that child more than I do. But let me tell you when it's even more freeing, when it goes wrong. You know, when I remember when Chad, your brother, he went through a very difficult season in his life. And I felt like such a failure as a parent, but some of the decisions he was making, I had no control over. They were his decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn that, wait, God loves him more than I do. And he will pursue him because Chad disappeared for a while. And I'm so grateful that he's doing great today. He's got children. He's a beautiful man of God. But I mean, his teenage years were rough. And I remember it took me down from this idea that I could be the perfect parent. And I kept being reminded God is the perfect parent, and his children rebelled against him and did exactly the opposite of what they should do. And so who am I to think I'm going to be a better parent than God? And just to be reminded, I get to steward my children and do the best I can, but they really belong to God. And that's so freeing, for us.
Well, and even you can, this is like kind of a side tangent, but even still, I had someone come to me and mention, her and I were having a conversation about my kids, what they've been through, what they've experienced. And she said, the prayer I speak over my kids every night is, God, be in the moments, in the spaces, in the gaps where I lack, and cover it. And oh my gosh, it literally makes me teary-eyed because that is exactly it, right? Like if we're truly stewarding our children, our home, our team, like we are going to lack. We're human. So we do not have perfect love. We do not have perfect like ability to manage our circumstances. We are emotional creatures. We will speak out of an emotion or a frustration or whatnot, right? But God is perfect. He doesn't. He does have a clarity and an ability to do what is right at all times. And so he can cover those things, right? And so when we truly are when all we're doing is stewarding his stuff, his people, his spaces, he can cover all of our lack. It actually gives you so much freedom to like be able to just be present, not so that you can just continue doing the thing you know you're not supposed to, but at the same time, because we cannot possibly cover every gap and every lack, right? There is going to be things. And so it just gives you this reminder and peace of like, okay, I'm going to steward this to the best of my ability. And Lord, just cover my lack, please, and he will.
Absolutely. And you know what's beautiful is God doesn't give us things the way we think of, say, a hot potato game where he goes, here it is, it's yours. Now I'm out of here. You're all figure it out,
homie.
Right? I mean, we have a beautiful, lovely, amazing God who says, I'm going to give you this to care, but I'm going to be right with you all along the way. I'm going to walk with you. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to provide you wisdom. Seek me. We'll get to do this together. And that is so freeing. And also it brings us a sense of joy that we go on this great adventure with God as he is guiding us and caring for us as we steward what he has given us. It's sort of this beautiful cycle or circle of love and abundance. So that I think the fruit of this is joy. We're not stressed or anxious about things. We can be more joyful. And I want to share a resource for our listeners. We're going to put this on the show notes, but highly recommend that you go and visit generousgiving.org. generousgiving.org. And right on the homepage, I just checked it out today. It's still there. So if not, you can search on their search bar. There's a story of a couple named Alan and Catherine Barnhart. And the reason I want you to look at that is because everything Kayleigh and I are talking about today, they live out. They own a business and they look at that business as actually something that belongs to God. They chose to limit their salary at a certain amount, and the rest is given for the kingdom. They give it away. And they have now the business was really tiny when they made this decision, but the business has grown dramatically. And so now the employees are part of the decision-making of how the money, all this money that's being made by this company that gets given away.
So
they're
cool.
So inspiring. And there's tons of videos on their website of people who look at everything that they own as something that God has given them to steward. It is so inspiring to watch. And what's most important, I want you to look at is the joy in their hearts and in their eyes. You can see the sparkle in their eyes because there's so much joy that they have experienced when they're living this out and joining God in what God is doing with what God has given them. It's unbelievable. So check that out for sure.
That's beautiful. I love that. And it's just a reminder, right? Like no matter what, going all the way back to that original conversation we had about your government cheese. And in that time as a kid, that felt like lack. It felt like so little. So then how is it possible for you to also steward that, for you to also share that, for you to also give out of that? Like, how is that possible? But there is always something that you can steward. And so, in fact, I would love for you all to participate in this conversation. We would love to know maybe something that you're looking around while you're listening to this podcast and realizing like, oh, I steward this. I steward a team. I steward a person. Like there could be one person, your child, your spouse, your partner, your whatever, right? So someone,
it your could mom, also, your dad,
literally anyone. It could be that you are stewarding an item or a thing, a home. Let us know. You either leave a comment if you're on Spotify, if you're on YouTube, you can leave a comment right down below. You can make a comment in our social media, or you can send us an email at hello@inesfranklin.com because we would just love to continue this conversation past just this podcast episode and this conversation specifically. But this is what I will say is do not look at what you have and assume that that means you do not have the ability to steward. Every single one of you under God's voice has something to steward. And it may seem like so little. It may feel like it's not enough, but it is. And God is trusting you with it and guiding you through it and will be with you in it. And the more that you do it, even in the little, the more that you will see his goodness and his presence and his consistency and how he stewards you in the midst of it all.
So good. Amen. Thank you, Kayleigh. This is beautiful. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Go through and listen to some of the other spiritual practices. Remember, these are not ways for us to earn God's favor. That's been given to us freely and unconditional by the love of Jesus Christ. But we do this to grow closer to God. And these are all wonderful ways to do that. So I hope this has blessed you. I pray that the peace and grace of Jesus Christ be with you today and all week long. God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Uncharted Podcast with Inés Franklin. Learn more about Inés at unchartedpod.com. Follow Inés' journey on Instagram at Inés Franklin. Sign up for our email list to receive direct access to online experiences and more. Thanks for listening, and join us again next time.